Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of A Froggy Yarn. My name is Rachel, and today we're going to be doing a more traditional podcast without quite as much content. I realized looking at last week's episode that we were drinking from a fire hose with the amount of content, so I've pulled back a little. Today we'll look at finished objects, we'll look at whips and progress on test knits, future plans, acquisitions, and then ending with a little Q&A and a message that showed up in my email. So, to support this channel, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share. And let's go ahead and dive right in. So I'm going to start with what I'm wearing. And I talked about this tank last week. This was the Tolsta Tank that had the happy accident of accidentally not having enough stitches in the cast-on. It is made with Monoko Splash yarn that I got from Knit Picks for $4 a skein, and I think they still have it. This is the colorway Olympic. It is a DK yarn, and I really like the Tolsta Tank design, especially because the fit in the arm is very bra friendly. It actually is just a perfect fit for my body. So I know that I will make this one again. I'll probably try a different yarn, but definitely making this one again. Let's see, I used US 6 needles, used 5 on the ribbing, and the yarn is 70% viscose and 30% cotton. I think that's it. Oh, and the designer is Rebecca Clow. Now let's get into finished objects. And my first finished object is one that I cast on the 4th of July. I knew I would have a lot of knitting time that day, and got the whole first panel done that day. And this is the Skyline by Yumiko Alexander. And this one is done flat, so each panel, one for the front, one for the back, is knit separately. And then they are seamed together at the shoulders. Then you pick up and do the armholes or the long sleeves, whichever you want to do. And then the last piece is to seam down the sides. So this is done in yarn that I had on hand, stash yarn, Bambootiful, which is a Yarn Bee yarn from Hobby Lobby. And the content of that particular yarn is 50% cotton, 50% bamboo. This particular garment took 617 yards or 271 grams. I used size US 10.5 needles. And this one was actually completed in 11 days. And honestly, there was a week where I didn't work on it at all. So it was maybe 3 days of knitting, with most of the knitting being on that one day on the 4th of July. On this pattern, if you decide to try it, I would say it's a very simple pattern. It's not difficult at all. It's beginner friendly. However, I'd caution you that these yarn overs that create the design, there are markers that go right before each of those. And I learned the hard way. It's really important to make sure that the yarn overs don't jump over your markers. I used the light bulb stitch markers thinking that would help because they're a little bigger. And it didn't. The yarn just wanted to hop over them, and then I would end up putting the yarn over in the wrong spot and have to frog back and fix it. So if you decide to try this, just after every single row, check those yarn overs and make sure they're lining up correctly, and it'll save you a lot of frogging in the long run. So Skyline by Yumiko Alexander, and I'll insert some B-roll so you can see what it looks like on the body. I will say that I don't normally do a lot of positive ease. I mean, I'll do the recommended amount in the pattern, but I don't do huge amounts of positive ease because I just feel like I get lost in the garment. And this one, I have somewhere between 12 and 15 inches of positive ease, and I almost feel like it's not enough. So as you'll see on the video where I'm showing you it on the body, it's not as flowy as I thought it would be, and I went up a size. So this one, I believe, is almost a 50-inch finished bust, and I have a 36-inch finished or 36-inch bust. So if you decide to make this, give yourself lots and lots of positive ease. I'm part of a knit-along group. There were 5 of us or 6 of us that did this together, and we're all having a very similar experience where we sized up significantly, and it actually fits pretty well. So it's a little bit unusual in that respect, but go up a size or give yourself lots and lots of positive ease if you make this garment. So Skyline. Okay, next, this is a fun one and a very quick one. So this is the, let me look at the name, I always get it wrong. This is the Cruz hoodie with back zipper, in Cascade 220 Superwash wool in the color pink. And I don't have the ball band anymore because I've probably had this in my stash for 20 years. But I wanted it to be washable since it is a baby knit. And I am going to show you the zipper on this, but I'm taking it out and redoing it by hand. I machine sewed it and it's white and I don't like it. But I'm going to be humble and show you my mistake so that you don't make the same mistake. You have to hand sew these in or it just doesn't work right. So I bought a new zipper that's pink and I'm going to take out the white one and put the pink one in. But I love this design because when you go to see how it's all puckery and everything, it's just not good. But the sweater itself is, and I love this because when you put it on the toddler, you simply put it on from behind them and then just zip from the hood right down to the bottom. It makes it really easy to get a squirmy young child into a sweater. So it's super great that way. This took, gosh, how much yarn? Less than 600 yards, and this is a size 18 months. I used a US size 7 needle and then a 6 for the ribbing. The pattern is by Flax and Twine, and it is in the Ravelry bundle that I put in the show notes. But nice and quick project. This took maybe 6 or 7 hours total to make. This is the third one I've made of these. And it goes to my niece, actually my great niece, who is due next week. So I'll be handing this over to them, and you probably won't see it with the new zipper in it because it'll be off to its new home. So, Cruz hoodie. All right, so that's it for finished objects this week. But I do have a whip to show you, and I'm very excited because this is a whip that I didn't think I would be allowed to show you, and I contacted the designer, and she gave me permission to go ahead and talk about it and show it to you. So the test knit that I am working on in Drops Bell in the colorway Petrol is called the Monoko Tee. And I love this pattern. It's very simple and easy to follow. And let me show you the top. So here it is. And isn't that blue gorgeous? I love that petrol color. So the Drops Bell is, let me get my notes here. It is 53% cotton, 33% viscose, 14% linen. I am knitting this on size 6 needles with the 4 for the ribbing and the cuffs. The sizes for this project range from 29 inches to 53.5 inches at the finished bust. And I am doing size 3, which will finish out at about 38 inches. This is knit from the top down, starting at the upper back, worked flat and increasing each row. Then stitches are picked up at the shoulders and then finally connected together, and the body is worked in the round. So here's where I'm at. I have 7 balls of the yarn, which should be perfect for my size, but I may end up playing a little bit of yarn chicken. So I went back last night and I added the collar and the sleeves, so that then I can just knit on the body until I run out of yarn. But look at that diamond lace pattern in the sleeves. It's just so pretty. There's such great detail on this sweater. And then I'm getting a nice, smooth, even fabric from the Drops Bell. So overall, just super happy with this. So that is the Monoko Tee, and it is a test knit. I will try to remember to let you know when the pattern is actually available in Ravelry, which I believe will be mid-August. And I'll try to remember to put a link in the show notes when that happens so that you can find the pattern. But designer is Julia Pirro, and boy, she has been a dream to test knit for. So if you ever need a first test knit, she would be a good experience. Okay, other whips. I have absolutely no progress on my Riplet blouse by Jennifer Shields Tolan. That's going to be the next one that I really go gangbusters on because it's due in August and it's on tiny needles with tiny yarn. So that'll be where my energy goes after I finish the Monoko. And then my Avenue tank for Mom, I did make a little progress, but not enough to show you because, again, tiny needles, tiny yarn, so it doesn't look like I got anything done. But I do want to show you another whip that I found, and there's a story behind this one. So let me show you the project first. This is, oops, sorry, I bumped the camera. This is the No Frills Sweater by Petite Knits. And when I ended up having rotator cuff surgery on Halloween last year, And my surgeon said I could keep knitting, so I couldn't do a lot. I was in a sling, but I could knit. So I picked a really easy pattern so that just in case I was on pain meds, I wouldn't have to worry about managing cables or anything. So I picked the Petite Knit No Frills Sweater pattern, knowing that I could do it without concentrating very hard. So I got going on it, and in early November, I went to a local conference, and I was sitting and listening to speakers, and I took my knitting with me and was working away on it, and, you know, got some good progress on it. And I came home from the conference and unloaded my bag and put everything away, and the next day, I went to get my sweater, and I found the sweater, but none of the yarn. All I had was the yarn that was attached to the sweater. And I kind of panicked a little. I thought, oh no, I left the yarn at the conference, which wasn't far away. So I went and checked and looked in the lost and found, checked with the office manager at the center. Nothing, no sign of it. Went through my house, and I'm fairly organized. I figured it had to be here somewhere. Looked in my yarn stash, looked everywhere, couldn't find it. Tore apart my car. I really thought I looked everywhere, and it didn't show up. So I thought, well, crud. I guess I can hibernate the project, and eventually the yarn has to show up. And if it doesn't, then I'll just frog it, and that's the end of it. So about a month ago, I was emptying out the floor of our pantry, and in our pantry I keep these grocery sacks. We live in Oregon, and so you bring your own bag to the grocery store. And so I have a bunch of these bags. Well, I had taken this bag with me to the conference, and I had shoved in my conference materials plus my sweater and my yarn. Well, apparently, when I pulled the sweater out, I had left the yarn in the bag without realizing it, and the bag ended up back where it was supposed to go in the pantry with all the grocery bags. So as I was pulling stuff out of the pantry, I'm pulling bags out and refolding them and making everything nice and neat, and lo and behold, there's my yarn. So I was very excited to go back into Ravelry and move my No Frills sweater out of hibernation and back into my active width. So I'm going to show you the yarn that I'm using for this. I'm really enjoying it. I have not used either of these. So it's two yarns. I'm holding them together. The first one is Fiber Space Cumulus, and it's an alpaca and silk blend. It's 74% baby Surrey alpaca, 26% mulberry silk, and it does not have a color. Wait, no, it does. It is celestial blue. So there's that. And then I'm holding it with Cascade Heritage, which is a 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon. And this one does not have a color name. It just has a number. So the number on this is 5745. And the two together, I think, are just luscious. That's not a really great representation of how they look in real life. But as you can see in the sweater, I'll get you a good look at that fabric. It goes really beautifully together. So this will be a fun one to have back in the rotation. I won't work on it a lot until my test knits are done, but I'll be excited to have this to wear this fall when things cool off a little bit. So now you've heard the saga of the Petite Knit No Frills sweater. Okay. I want to move now into some future plans, and one of the things I've committed to is I have a pretty large yarn stash, and I love that. It's like having a palette to choose from. I always have things I can be working on, and I don't have to go buy yarn. Not that I don't love to buy yarn, but I need to use what I have. But one of the things I struggle with is choosing colors, and it's not that I'm bad at it. I just always second guess myself. So I dug into my stash, and I pulled out 4 colorways for one project and 2 colorways for another project. And I've put together a Google form where you can vote, or you can just put a note in the comments, either way. But I wanted to kind of make it fun, and then next week I'll share the results so that I can cast on one of the new projects. So project number 1, and I'll put a picture up here, is the Alpine Bloom. And I've had this in my queue for a while. I've been wanting to make it. And I have also purchased previously knitting for Olive Merino, but I've never knit with it before. So I'm really looking forward to trying it out. So this is colorway A for Alpine Bloom, and it would be Dusty Aqua for the main color. And then for the contrast color, it would be both of these. This is also knitting for Olive, but in Dusty Violet. And then this is a Nootka Gusto wool sock yarn, 75% merino wool, 25% nylon. And the goal would be to use them together as the contrast. So that would be main color, contrast color, and contrast color. So that is choice A for Alpine Bloom. And I do have pictures of all of the colorways in the poll on Google. If you don't have Google, I'll try to post a picture of all the colorways up here so you can choose A, B, C, or D. But either way, throw it in the comments or vote online. Okay, this is colorway B for Alpine Bloom, which would again be the Dusty Aqua for the main color, and then the contrast color for the flowers. Okay, there it is. That's an accurate color. This is a Zauberball Crazy with lots of different shades of blue, some green, some brown, some cream. So that would be the flowers. So option B would be that right there. Okay, so then option C would change the main color from the blue to this pea shoot green, which is still knitting for olive. And then the contrast for the flowers would be this, a different Zauberball Crazy that has brown, blue, green, a little cream color there. So together, looks like that. That is option C. And then option D, again, would use the pea shoot green for the main color. But for the contrast, would use Earth Yarn's unique fingering weight sock yarn. Look at those colors. So it would look like that. So that is option D. So whether you just want to put into the comments A, B, C, or D, or go into the Google form and vote, help me decide which colorway to use for the Alpine Bloom. Now the other pattern I have made before, it is the Felix Cardigan by Amy Christoffers. I made it for my mom, absolutely loved the pattern, and now I want to make one for me. So I'm starting to plan my fall knits a little bit. I probably won't wear a heavy cardigan for a while, but it'll take me a couple of weeks to make it. And so there are two choices that I have sweater quantities of that will work for the Felix Cardigan. And the first one is a Knit Picks yarn called Muse, and it's in the colorway Tranquility Hand Paint. This is an Aran weight yarn, but it really knits up pretty close to worsted. And that gives you a pretty good idea of the colors. So that is choice 1. I'll switch to numbers on this one so that we don't get them confused. And then choice 2 is a Deluxe Worsted Tweed Superwash by Universal Yarn. And it's a lovely teal color with little bits of tweediness in it. Let's see if I can... Sorry, the lighting is not terrific. But hopefully you get a good idea. And I put pictures in the Google form of each of the yarns that were taken in good light. So hopefully it'll help you be able to see it a little bit better. And that would be option 2. So for the Felix Cardigan, 1 or 2. And I can't wait to see what you choose. And I'm going to go with whichever one it is. I'm going to cast it on and we're going to make it happen as soon as those test knits are off my needles. Okay, moving into acquisitions. So last week I shared that this is my birthday month. And for my birthday, my husband is getting me an e-spinner. And so I had gone online, done the research, talked to some people that have them, and I picked out a Starling from Daedalus. And I got onto their wait list, and they said it could take 3 to 6 months before I'm notified. Well, I got onto Discord. I'm part of a knitting chat group, and there was a direct message to me saying, hey, my name came up on the list, and I think you were ahead of me. Did you get a notification? So I logged in and checked my email, and sure enough, I got my notification saying, hey, verify your information, make sure the colors you picked are correct. We're going to make your Starling and ship it to you. And so I did a little happy dance and then went in and verified all my stuff and made sure I had, ordered all the right pieces and everything. And so my Starling is being built. It's 3D printed, so they're building it next week. And then they put it through a testing process, and it is supposed to ship the last week in August. So I can start spinning on a spinning wheel in September, and I am so excited. I can't wait. So I'll put the link down below in the show notes in case you want to look at Daedalus and see what they have to offer. They have a lot of different options, and you just can't go wrong with a Daedalus, is what I've been told. So when it gets here, I'll do an unboxing video and let you join in the fun of getting started with me. I don't have a lot of other acquisitions, but I do have a couple fun things to show you. So last week I showed you the flock vest that I had made to wear to the Flock Fiber Festival if I go. I'm still on the fence, but I think I want to. And one of the challenges I ran into is that when I went to sew the buttons on, I wanted to use the yarn that I had used on the stripes to put the buttons on as a contrast. And I didn't have a darning needle that would fit through the buttonholes, and I didn't have a regular needle that the yarn would fit in. So I got creative, and I used, if you have ever had dental work done where you had to use a threader, you know what this is, but it's like a little loop, and it's plastic and flexible. And so I used a dental floss bridge threader to put my buttons on, and it was a little fiddly, but it worked, and I thought there has got to be a better solution. Well, there is. So I ordered these, and these are flexible plastic needles that you can use that fit through your buttons. And so I brought one of my buttons here just to show you, but look at that, fits right in there. So you can put the yarn in it and still sew your buttons on without having to resort to using tools meant for cleaning your teeth. So there's that, and I will link those in the show notes. And then my other great Amazon find was I like stitch stoppers, the ones on my newly found no frills sweater, but they tend to pop off because I sometimes throw my bags around more than I should. And so I thought, oh, there has to be a better solution. Well, it turns out there is. So these are sweater toggles, and again, I'll put it in the show notes. They're meant for holding the strings on a hoodie. If you squeeze them together, you can see the holes, and then they stay on the needles, and you will not be able to pull them off your needles very easily. So these are fantastic. I think I like them even better than stitch stoppers, although they aren't as cute. They do come, and you get a dozen in a box for about $4.99. So another great find. And then my only other acquisition to show you this week, because again, I'm trying to stash down, not stash up, I want to talk about two different 100% Peruvian wool yarns that I got. And you know I love cone yarns because I hate weaving in ends. I'm kind of lazy that way. But this is Knit Picks Palette, and their sale is still going on. This cone is equivalent to 10 skeins of palette yarn. It's 500 grams or 2,310 yards. And I'll show you, hopefully you can see, it's got a nice halo on it. I often will use palette held double to get a little bit thicker yarn when I make tops, but just lots of really nice, richly saturated colors. So that's palette. And then I got a cone of wool of the Andes, which is, it said it's a worsted weight, but I've used it as more of like a light worsted or a DK. And hopefully you can see that. This is the purple. Again, a nice luscious color, 100% Peruvian Highland wool. And also, this is 1,100 yards, equivalent to 10 skeins of the wool of the Andes yarn, 500 grams, and they're still on sale. I checked today when I filmed this, and these cones were, I believe, $31.49, which, if you break it down, that's $3 a skein for 100% wool yarn. And the palette cones, I believe, were $34.99. So, pretty good bargain. And if you are going to get yarn at Knit Picks, if you use my code, I don't get a commission on it, but you get 15% off. So that brings the total down even a little bit more, but I'm not going to do math right now. It takes, what, $4.50, $5 off of it. So that's pretty affordable, under $30 for 500 grams or 2,300 yards of yarn. So just putting that out there as an option because I love my cone yarns. Okay. Last thing, I got an email and a comment after the last video asking about my dental floss Lifelines. You know I love my dental tools. And so every time I go to the dentist, they give you the little sample toothpaste and the toothbrush and the little flossers. Well, I have a big thing of dental floss I keep in my bathroom, but I take the little ones that they give me because they're so cute and tiny, and I chuck them into my bags. And so each of my knitting bags has dental floss in it. And you can use it as try-on cording if you're in a pinch, but I also use it as lifelines. And so I'm going to put some pictures up here to show you. When I was doing the sleeve on my Monoko Tee Test Knit, it had lace in the pattern, and I'm not intimidated by lace, and this was not a difficult lace, but still, if you drop a stitch in lace, it's much harder to pick it up than it is in just plain stockinette. And so I did use dental floss, and I love this pattern. Julia Pirro did a great job. She actually said, put in a lifeline, and she marked on which rows to do it so that if you do have to rip back, you even know what row you were on. So I took pictures as I was doing those lifelines and finishing that sleeve, and I'm posting them up there just to kind of show you the process. And there are two basic ways to do the lifeline. You can either take a darning needle and go through each stitch on your needle, keeping them on the needles and going around the stitch markers. If you go through the stitch markers, they get hung up in your knitting. So you go around the stitch markers, but through the stitches, all the way around your project, bring it out on the other side, and then I tie a little knot in it so it doesn't go anywhere. But the even easier way is, if you are using circular needles, the place where you tighten the needle, there's a hole. I'm hoping you can see it. Maybe right there is a little hole. And it turns out that that little hole is just the right size to get your dental floss through the hole. So it's very important, if you're right-handed, like I am, that you do the right-hand needle. So I put the dental floss in the right-hand needle through that hole, and then I just knit one round, and at the end of that round, I pull the floss out of the needle, but leave it in the knitting. And again, just tie it together in the front, bring the first and the second end, bring it through, tie it, and it just stays there. And then I go on and knit until I get to the next place I want the lifeline, and I do the same thing. So it's faster because you're not having to thread a needle and stop knitting and put the needle or put the floss in. It just happens while you're knitting. So most of you probably already knew that, but if you're like me and it was new learning, it saves time and it makes sure that I actually put those lifelines in because I don't really have to stop to do it. So that's the dental floss lifelines and how I do it. The other question I had was, what do you do if you make a mistake and you don't have a lifeline? And I am not great at fixing mistakes if it's not just plain stockinette. If it's stockinette, or even if it's garter stitch, I'm pretty good at dropping down and fixing them with a crochet hook and, bringing them back up. So I took a picture in stockinette of what you can do, and I often will take just a brightly colored other yarn and just go through the right leg or the left leg of every stitch all the way around and then rip back to that point. But if you are in a very textured knit and you haven't put in a lifeline, it's often very difficult to put one in, and I end up just ripping back and starting over. Hence the name A Froggy Yarn, because I do a lot of frogging. But I am trying to use lifelines more consistently so that I don't have to do as much ripping back. And that's actually been really helpful. I lucked out on those sleeves. I put in lifelines, I think 3 times on each sleeve. Never had to use them, just pulled them out at the end when I was done. But it helped me knowing they were there if I needed them. So, okay, wrapping up. I told you this one wasn't going to be drinking from the fire hose. Much shorter, a little easier, less to digest. But I do want to end by reminding you that I do have my Pearl Soho affiliate link in the show notes. And it's not a discount for you, but if you're buying Pearl Soho yarn anyway, I would appreciate it if you use my link because I do get a 10% commission that comes back to this channel and helps fund this. And the Knit Picks Ambassador code, I talked about that earlier. I do not make a commission on it, but you would be able to have a 15% discount if you purchase yarn. Again, no pressure, but I'm just throwing it out there as a service if you want to use it. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share as I grow this channel. And I hope you have a fabulous week. And I'll see you next weekend for episode 3 of A Froggy Yarn and the results of our voting on my 2 new projects.